Can you give us some sort of sense as to where you think this election is going to play out? Where is the epicentre of this campaign, and where are the other major areas of interest that you see?
Well, I think you'll be seeing a lot of campaigning in the outer suburbs of the capital cities. That's where Australian elections traditionally decided. And in particular in Queensland. In Queensland there's a lot of outer suburban seats and also regional seats which are more in play. So I think you'll see a lot of leaders spending a lot of time in Queensland, a lot of time in New South Wales. It's one of those peculiarities for the last 15 years of Australian elections that New South Wales and Queensland have tended to decide the result, that the battle lines are drawn in South Australia and Victoria, and there aren't many seats that change hands. And Labor's done badly in Western Australia for such a long time now that Western Australia doesn't normally come into play. Tasmania's got a couple of seats. You've got a marginal seat in the Northern Territory, but the bulk of the key seats are in New South Wales and Queensland.
All right, well then let's start in Queensland, Anthony. What are the seats that you think are genuinely in play? Which ones could change hands?
When you're talking about the regional seats of Dawson, Flynn, Leichhardt, the seats where up in the north of the state where there could be problems for the government. Around the edges of Brisbane, you've got seats like Longman, Dixon, which has been affected by the redistribution, Ford. There's sort of seats around the edges of the city which there'll be a lot of visiting in the campaign. And seats like Brisbane, the inner city seat, has got some interest because of a high-profile Liberal candidate and high-profile Greens candidate. So we'll see a lot of visits to all those electorates. In the end, the electorates for prime ministers and opposition leaders become backdrops for the issue of the day and for the general campaign, and we don't actually see much of them really in the major national coverages.
Anthony, what about seats there where there are members who are retiring? Of course, it does give you some advantage. We saw in South Australia that there was really quite a significant local effect. So how important is it that you have an entrenched member in a seat that you consider to be marginal?
It's not often quite as dramatic as in say, the South Australian election. The electorates are much smaller there, and it was confined to a very small number of electorates. There's a lot more federal electorates than there are in South Australia. Sitting members can have an impact. We've got the government's basic problem. It's got to hang on to 12 seats to hang on to majority government. It's currently notionally got 88. It can go down to 76 before it starts to be in danger of losing its majority. Of those 12 seats, 5 of them are currently notionally Liberal, are now actually Liberal held. There are currently Liberal MPs in those seats, which are notionally Labor. And there's 3 other Labor seats, Robertson, Bass and one other, Macquarie, where there is no sitting Labor MP. The Labor MP is retiring. So Labor's only got 4 sitting MPs in the 12 seats it needs to hold. So that's a difficulty for them. And seats like Dixon, where Peter Dutton is recontesting as a Liberal MP in a notionally Labor seat, he has the advantages of incumbency. He's still the sitting member. He gets all the allowances that come with being a sitting member. So there are incumbency factors in favour of the Liberal Party in some of those seats. Also, on the other side of it, though, there are Labor seats now which are quite marginal, which the Labor Party just managed to scrap off the government at the last election, off the Howard government. The Labor Party may get what's called a sophomore surge in those seats. The second term as a member for a seat can sometimes see you improve your vote because you've been the member for a term. You turn around the sitting member effect, which was in favour of the Howard government in 2007 in some of those seats, will be in favour of Labor this time. But also you've got some of the Liberal MPs who hung on last time, Peter Lindsay in Herbert or Joanna Gash in Gilmore, they're no longer, or Fran Bailey where she's retiring in McEwen. They hung on desperately at the last election as sitting members of the government, of the Howard government. The Howard government's not there anymore. That well-oiled machine the Howard government had of having budgets and then being able to turn that into direct mail to candidates in marginal seats who would direct mail through to constituents interested in issues. That machine's not there anymore because the Howard government's not in office anymore. So some of those sitting members who are currently Liberal MPs in marginal seats will find it a little bit tougher this time without that sort of infrastructure behind them.